The Psychology of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini, Ph.D., summarized by Detailed Book Summaries. Click on the subscribe button. Let us know in the comment the book you would love us to summarize for you. Chapter 1: The Roots of Human Influence and the Power of Automatic Responses. In Influence, New and Expanded, Robert Cialdini opens with an exploration of one of the most fascinating aspects of human behavior, our tendency to act automatically. He explains that the pressures of modern life leave us with little time to fully analyze every decision. So we rely on mental shortcuts, simple rules our brains adopt to make rapid choices. These shortcuts are efficient, but they also make us vulnerable to persuasion. Cialdini draws from decades of scientific research to show that much of our behavior is triggered by cues we barely notice. A polite request, a certain tone of authority, the appearance of scarcity, or even the mere act of receiving something for free can engage deep psychological mechanisms that often bypass rational scrutiny. Cialdini positions influence not as manipulation, but as the natural consequence of how human psychology has evolved. Across cultures and generations, people develop predictable patterns because these patterns reduce effort and increase survival. But in the modern world, professional persuaders, marketers, politicians, negotiators, salespeople have learned to harness these patterns in ways that exert powerful control over our choices. The author gives real-world demonstrations of how small triggers produce big effects. He tells stories of compliance professionals who subtly exploit these biases, telemarketers who prime callers to say yes before making a request, fundraisers who use carefully framed statements to increase donations, and retailers who exploit the human preference for shortcuts by labeling products limited time only, even when supply is abundant. This chapter builds the foundation for understanding that influence is not inherently bad. In fact, Cialdini emphasizes that ethical persuasion is essential in everyday life. Parents must influence children, leaders must influence teams, and educators must influence students. The problem arises when people weaponize these psychological principles to push others into actions not in their best interest. By revealing the architecture of persuasion, Cialdini empowers readers to recognize when these techniques are used responsibly and when they are deployed deceptively. He sets the stage for the 6 original principles of influence, as well as the new 7th principle introduced in this expanded edition. These principles, reciprocity, commitment and consistency, social proof, liking, authority, scarcity, and unity, operate as the engines that drive persuasion. As the reader progresses, each principle becomes an anchor for understanding how influence shapes decisions, purchases, relationships, and even social structures. Cialdini argues that influence is only unethical when the persuader attempts to hide the true intention or distort genuine evidence. When used with transparency and goodwill, these principles become tools for creating stronger connections encouraging helpful behavior and motivating positive change. This introductory chapter functions like a light being switched on in a dim room. It exposes the automatic ways we respond to persuasive cues and invites readers to step into a more conscious relationship with their own decision-making. It signals that influence is not about being smarter, louder, or more forceful than others. Instead, it is about understanding human psychology at the level where real decisions occur, below the surface, in the quiet mental shortcuts that guide behavior. With this foundation laid, Cialdini transitions into a deeper examination of each principle, beginning with one that is nearly universal to all cultures and societies: the rule of reciprocity. Chapter 2: Reciprocity, Commitment, and the Pull of Psychological Obligation. The second chapter dives into what Cialdini identifies as one of the most powerful forces in human interaction: the principle of reciprocity. From early civilizations to modern societies, reciprocity serves as a social glue. People feel compelled to repay what they have received. Whether it's a gift, a favor, a concession, or even simple kindness, the pull to give back is strong enough to influence decisions against one's initial preferences. Cialdini gives striking examples. People donate more to charities when they receive small gifts. Waiters who give mints earn higher tips. Negotiators concede strategically to stimulate reciprocal concessions. The rule works because reciprocation builds trust, cooperation, and social harmony. Violating it invites disapproval, while honoring it elevates one's reputation. But reciprocity's strength makes it vulnerable to exploitation. Cialdini recounts cases where individuals accepted unwanted gifts just to feel pressured into compliance later. He explains that the key to resisting unethical reciprocity lies in recognizing when a gesture is manipulative rather than genuinely generous. Honesty in intention differentiates ethical persuasion from coercion. The chapter moves fluidly into the next major principle: commitment and consistency. Humans prefer to act in ways that align with their past statements, self-image, and behaviors. Once we say yes, sign our name, take a small step, or publicly express an opinion, we naturally seek consistency by reinforcing that commitment. Cialdini powerfully illustrates how a small initial choice can trigger a chain of much larger commitments. Salespeople ask harmless questions to create momentum. Political campaigns secure micro-pledges before requesting larger actions. Parents see how a child who takes ownership of a rule enforces it more strongly than if the rule were simply imposed. Consistency feels like integrity, and because humans want to be seen as dependable, they unconsciously protect that image. The danger arises when persuaders use small, seemingly insignificant commitments to nudge people into much larger obligations. Cialdini emphasizes that reflection is the antidote. When people pause to ask whether their earlier commitment was freely chosen and aligned with their values, the spell breaks. This chapter blends these two principles into a deeper understanding. Reciprocity creates obligation from the outside, while commitment and consistency create obligation from the inside. Together, they form a powerful psychological loop that can influence decisions, shape behavior, and guide relationships. They prepare the reader for even more socially driven forms of influence that appear in the next chapter. Chapter 3: Social Proof, Liking, and the Power of Human Connection. Cialdini's third chapter explores how people often look outward to others to determine what they should believe or how they should behave. Social proof operates as a kind of psychological compass. When uncertain, humans assume that if many people are doing something, it must be correct. This form of influence is especially potent in ambiguous situations, high-pressure environments, or unfamiliar contexts. Advertisers know this, which is why they showcase best-selling, most popular, or trending now labels. Restaurants use long lines to signal desirability. Online platforms rely on likes and shares as silent persuaders. Even emergency situations demonstrate how people freeze when no one else reacts, assuming everything is fine. Cialdini explains that social proof is essential for survival. It minimizes cognitive load and reduces risk. Yet, like the other principles, it can misfire. Large crowds can follow bad ideas as easily as good ones. He encourages readers to use social proof as information, not as a substitute for judgment. The chapter transitions into the liking principle, revealing how much we rely on emotional affinity when making decisions. People are more likely to comply with individuals they like, admire, or feel connected to. Liking emerges from multiple triggers: physical attractiveness, similarity, compliments, collaboration, and familiarity. Cialdini offers memorable studies, such as negotiators who find common ground before bargaining, reaching better outcomes, or salespeople who remark on similarities, real or fabricated, to build rapport. Even subtle compliments, when sincere, create a sense of warmth and goodwill that leads to higher compliance. He stresses that liking is deeply human. We gravitate toward people who make us feel comfortable and understood. Ethical persuaders rely on genuine connection. Unethical ones manufacture artificial charm. Cialdini encourages readers to look beyond surface cues and evaluate whether the persuader's intentions align with mutual benefit. Together, social proof and liking highlight the profound impact of social bonds on human decision-making. Influence is not merely logical, it is relational. And as the narrative progresses, Cialdini moves into an even more authoritative source of persuasion: the power of status and expertise. Chapter 4: Authority, Scarcity, and the Magnetism of High-Stakes Decisions. In this chapter, Cialdini examines the principle of authority, revealing how people instinctively defer to experts, professionals, and individuals who appear knowledgeable. The human tendency to obey authority traces back to evolutionary survival, following leaders protected groups and ensured order. Modern modern society still reflects this instinct. People trust doctors in white coats, officials with credentials, and voices that sound confident and authoritative. Research shows that individuals comply more readily when authority is symbolized by titles, uniforms, or artifacts of expertise. Cialdini warns, however, that symbols of authority can be faked. A confident tone might conceal incompetence. Impressive clothing might mask deception. He encourages readers to evaluate both trustworthiness and expertise before granting compliance. The narrative shifts into the scarcity principle, one of the most emotionally charged forms of influence. Scarcity triggers urgency because people fear losing opportunities. Limited edition releases, countdown timers, few seats left, and time-sensitive offers activate a primal desire to act quickly. Scarcity works because humans equate rarity with value. When something is difficult to obtain, it feels more desirable. Research shows that people are more motivated by the thought of losing something than gaining something equivalent. Cialdini deepens the concept by introducing reactance, the psychological pushback humans feel when freedom is threatened. Scarcity signals that choice is disappearing, creating a surge of desire and an urgency to reclaim control. This explains why people panic buy, chase after trends, or fight for exclusive access. Cialdini emphasizes, again, the ethical use of these tools. Scarcity is valid when the limitation is real. It becomes manipulation when the limitation is manufactured or exaggerated. Readers learn that the best defense against artificial scarcity is to slow down and evaluate whether the urgency is justified. When decisions are made with clarity instead of panic, influence becomes a tool of empowerment rather than coercion. This chapter weaves authority and scarcity into a compelling exploration of how high-stakes situations, whether expertise-driven or urgency-driven, override careful thinking. It prepares readers for the final and newest principle in Cialdini's expanded framework. Chapter 5, Unity and the Deep Psychology of We. The final chapter introduces the seventh principle of influence, unity, an addition unique to the expanded edition of Cialdini's work. Unity represents the deepest form of human connection, the sense of shared identity. Unlike liking, which is based on attraction or admiration, unity is rooted in oneness, the feeling that this person is part of my tribe. When people perceive others as members of their group, whether through family, culture, shared experiences, or common struggle, their willingness to help increases dramatically. Unity is not about similarity, it is about belonging. Cialdini illustrates how identity shapes decision-making more powerfully than logic or evidence. Individuals make sacrifices for those they perceive as their own. Political movements, social groups, and communities leverage this principle to build solidarity. Companies create brand tribes around shared values. Even minor signals of unity, such as using inclusive language, we, our, together, strengthen cooperation. Yet unity's power can be misused. Scammers may pose as fellow community members. Bad actors may exploit group identity to manipulate loyalty. And organizations may use fabricated unity to push harmful agendas. Cialdini encourages readers to protect themselves by distinguishing genuine unity from manufactured belonging. The chapter concludes with a broader reflection. Influence is at its strongest when it honors human connection. Reciprocity, commitment, social proof, liking, authority, scarcity, and unity all tap into deep psychological patterns that can uplift or deceive. Cialdini closes by empowering readers to use these principles ethically. When influence is transparent, respectful, and grounded in mutual benefit, it becomes a force for positive change. But when used manipulatively, it erodes trust and autonomy. Through this final exploration, Cialdini transforms influence from a mysterious force into an understandable human phenomenon. Readers finish with clearer awareness, stronger defenses, and a deeper appreciation of how persuasion shapes everyday life. The book's message resonates long after the final page. Understanding influence is not just about resisting manipulation. It is about becoming a more conscious, ethical, and effective communicator in a world full of persuasion. Click on the subscribe button. Let us know in the comment the book you would love us to summarize for you.